Hola, bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Selene Zamorano.
Not like a real one, like uno, dos, tres.
Oh, I thought we were just uno, dos, uno, dos, 1, 2.
Hello and happy Monday, fellow Rotarians. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in reciting the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? I'd like to now invite Chuck Hyatt up for our invocation.
As we are here in the middle of January, I invite you to think back to your middle school or high school course, or perhaps a college lit course, in which you learned why the months were named the way they were. And January is named for the god Janus, a Roman god of mythology, who had two faces. Now, he wasn't two-faced, but he had two faces so that he could look back and look forward. And that's what the month of January creates for us. As I think about that in the context of National Mentoring Month, that seems to be applicable as well. Started reading a new book this year, great quotation that I think applies to mentoring in the process we're all involved in at the turn of the year. Roy T. Bennett, an author and kind of motivational kind of guy, says, "Believe in yourself. You are braver than you think, more talented than you know, and capable of more than you can imagine. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that we can be in this place today. We celebrate mentoring. We celebrate the life and ministry and service, seeking of justice of Martin Luther King Jr. He certainly exemplified service above self. And we thank you for that honor, that memory, and the justice that has come about because of that. May we continue to implement that according to your way. In your name we pray it. Amen.
As Chuck alluded to, many of us are certainly aware that today is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Just a word about Dr. King. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to the nonviolent struggle for racial equity in the United States. He is described as a common man with a general message of love. He is famously known for the August 28, 1963 March on Washington, where the I Have a Dream speech was delivered. The celebration of his life is often seen as a celebration of humanity. And when I think about that service over self component that Chuck referenced as well, I recall his quote, "Everyone can be great because everyone can serve." And mentoring is a really special and a really powerful way that our club has embraced just that. I'd like to invite Rotarian Stephen Williamson up to provide a mission moment about how we continue to lift the power of mentoring with a Sioux 52 highlight.
Fellow Rotarians, my name is Stephen Williamson. I'm director of the foundation at Southeast Technical College. I'm also chair-elect of the South Dakota Humanities Council. Before I discuss my work at Hawthorne Elementary School, it would be irresponsible for me not to talk about a big win that we just had at Southeast Technical College. Last semester, in coordination with the Department of Corrections, Labor, and the Governor's Office, Southeast Tech welcomed 15 new students from the state pen. I get a little emotional about this because it was a big thing. To complete their certificate in welding. They were mentored by our staff, members of the penitentiary, and our welding instructor and other instructors at Southeast Tech. 13 of them graduated in December, and all of them have obtained employment upon their release. We will continue this program and plan to expand it. It was powerful to see these men walk across the stage in their gowns and receive their diploma with their families and especially their children on hand. Once you learn to read, you will forever be free, Frederick Douglass. Last spring, I joined a few Rotarians at Hawthorne Elementary to receive some kind of award, support. Angie was there. I think Joel Sylvester was there. And I was emotionally touched by the diverse students, teachers, and administrators. And as I was leaving, I left my business card with the principal and said that if they needed a reading assistant volunteer, I would be interested. This fall, I received a call from Hawthorne Elementary asking if I was serious about being a volunteer reading assistant. I was. And paperwork was sent by the school. After passing the background check, thankfully, I started going to Miss Peterson's third grade class every Wednesday from 10 to 10:30 a.m., where individually I get to listen to students read to me. They bring a book that is appropriate for their level of reading. If a student is struggling with a word, we work on it together. Let's take another look at that word. That's a long word. Let's break that up a little bit. Some struggle more than others. Some of them can't read. It's most important as you work with students to have an attitude of gratitude. thank you so much for reading to me today. Never guilt, never shame for where they're at in the world. So, as a small c conservative who does not fit into or wanted really by either political party, I wholeheartedly believe in the ideals of DEEI, diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion, though I may do so imperfectly. In my mind, when I go to Hawthorne Elementary on Wednesdays, I am living out those ideals. I'm living out my faith. I'm answering the call from people like Martin Luther King. And I want to thank Steve Hildebrand and Mayor Ten Haken and Downtown Rotary and others who have championed Sioux 52. It has been life-changing for me. Thank you.
Stephen, my goodness, thank you so very much. I am honored to be a Downtown Rotarian with you. Really, really special story. I'd like to invite our panelist and moderator up. Let's continue with our conversations today. As they make their way up, today's program is about building your own table for your diverse community. Joining us on stage is Selene Zamorano Ochoa. Was I close? She is the CEO and co-founder of the South Dakota Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization actively promoting the economic and educational growth to empower all Latinos, especially business owners, in the state of South Dakota. Selene has been an advocate for her community from immigration issues to the pandemic. She has been in the front lines for her community for 20 years. Kuol Malou was born in what is now known as South Sudan before the country's independence and migrated to the United States as a refugee in 1998 after fleeing the Civil War. He ultimately settled in the Midwest, where he graduated high school and attended college at Western Iowa Tech. Kuol is a highly active leader in the community of Sioux Falls. He serves as a board member of South Dakota Voices for Peace, a board member for Sioux Falls Teammates Mentoring, was co-chair of the Community Division for Forward Sioux Falls, is board president of Reach Literacy, and is co-founder of ACE Academy, where he is director of community engagement. We also have Tamien Dysart with us. He is the CEO and co-founder of Think3D, the Culture Coaches, specializing in helping organizations build intentional cultures. Before launch of Think3D in 2016, Tamien spent over 16 years leading people and teams at Fortune 500 financial institutions and learned how to build a ladder of personal development to drive engagement and culture. A byproduct of decades of intentional personal development, Tamien's personal mission is to help people unlock their highest potential, both personally and professionally. Last but not least, moderating this powerhouse panel is Downtown Rotarian Kira Kimball. Kira, thank you for bringing this program to life. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, panelists, for being here today, and Rotarians as well. Today, we honor the profound legacy of not only one of the greatest Black leaders, but also one of the greatest leaders of all time, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is important for me to acknowledge that I am a white person facilitating this conversation on this day, and that in and of itself is problematic. But our own reality as Downtown Rotary is that we have few members identifying as Black people or communities of color. And with the few Black members we do have, we cannot always put the burden of doing the work, of leading these conversations on those few, as that sometimes can be led to feelings of tokenism and can reflect a performative organization not sincere in its desire to do better for communities of color. But in order for Rotary to attract Black members, Hispanic, Latino members, Indigenous, Asian Pacific Islanders, refugees, and immigrants, we have to do the work of understanding what is important to them, what would bring them value in our proposition, and what the barriers are that can get in the way. We must listen with genuine interest and then act and be accountable to doing different. If we want to grow representation in our organizations and our businesses at all levels and in our community as well, and create racial equity, then we have to do the work. And that starts first with listening with humility, demonstrating genuine curiosity to learn, and extending belief in a lived experience different from our own. Speaking to white people now, including myself. In this panel conversation, I believe we will all have the opportunity to practice these behaviors. So let's get started. Welcome, panelists and friends, and thank you for being here today, not only to talk about your organizations, but also to share what you've discovered was your need to build your own table and your journey to do so. But before we jump into that, let's talk first about the mission and purpose of each of your organizations. So Rotarians who might not have experience with your organization might know what that is. Tamien, I'll have you start.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here and talking about it, especially on this historic day, MLK Day. So Think 3D, our mission is pretty simple, 5 simple words. We exist to add value. In that really feeds and fuels our vision statement, which is to redefine the definition and expectation of workplace and community culture. So obviously we know on the culture side of it within organizations, there's been a need to kind of transform the way we do work for quite some time. But on a broader scale, and part of why I feel like I'm here and having a discussion today is the community side of it. What is that vision of our community? And redefining the definition and expectations of our community culture, what does that look like? And so we have been involved in several facets of how can we help improve our community, from starting our Leaders of Tomorrow program to leading the quarterly table talks to helping to start up the neighborhood soccer league. And so overall, our mission and vision is to how can we help impact not only organizations, but also the broader Sioux Falls community to help it step into that next version of itself.
Thank you, Tamien. Selene.
I wrote it down. So my name is Selene Zamorano. Thank you so much, Rotary Downtown, for having us on this very special day. I see familiar faces and some new faces. Thank you so much. We are the South Dakota Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Our mission is to inspire, empower our Latinos throughout education, plenty of education, advocacy, and ongoing support, while actively promoting business opportunities for the Latino communities in the whole state of South Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you, Selene. How about for you, Kuol?
Thank you for having us here during MLK Day. And I think when we talk about organizations and why we create these silos in our communities, the purpose, and I am being a CEO of the Hub essentially was created because there was a need. And coming up with the name of organization has always been hard. And when my business partner, Julian, and I discussed it, it's like, Julian, if we call this organization, what is it going to be? We essentially called it the Hub because the Hub at its core just means a place where people share ideas and knowledge. So our goal of our organizations is to help inspiring entrepreneurs in the BIPOC community, refugees and immigrants, not because it's just another entity that just needs to be created, but because there's a need and the unheard voice of our community, especially in the BIPOC entrepreneurs and refugees, because there's lots of barriers and gaps and disparities that we thought that needed to be addressed to help us move forward as a community. So the Hub at its core, we're a nonprofit 501c3 that helps inspiring entrepreneurs have a place where their voices can be heard through all the barriers that they face in society.
Thank you, Kuol. So in thinking about your organizations, you're looking for impact in our community, outside of our community, across the state. And the reality is there are many organizations that provide professional development education or entrepreneurial education, small business support, leadership development. So in thinking about the title of our time together today, which was about building your own table, talk a little bit about how each of you came to that conclusion, that the tables that are available to you don't seem so available, and that you had to go about building your own infrastructure, your own system for the communities of color and underrepresented individuals in which you advocate for. Kuol, could you start?
Thank you for that question. Creating your own table is like when you have friends, when you meet people, when you invite them to your dinner table. You can make the great food. Your grandma or mother can make the delicious dish. But what happens within that dish is that you talk about the culture of the food, the history. And I think when we're creating our own table, we also have to take the time to invest in the people you bring to the table. So a lot of times when we create our own table or whatnot, it's like bringing a chair to a table where you are not even knowledgeable what's happening with the dish. So I bring that as an example because whenever we want to invest in others, in a community, you have to take the time and invest in getting to know those people. So when it comes to creating your own table, it's a hard concept for us because I come from a culture of communal care. What that means is that we take you and meet you where you're at. We don't come with our unconscious bias. We don't say, oh, I think this person really likes this. We take the time to invest and know you at your core to see what you need. So when it comes to building your own table, it's not necessarily having the tools set and ready to go, but you ask, how can we build this together?
So for you, it's really about building community and building power for immigrants and refugees that maybe isn't afforded in other spaces. So Selene, I'm curious, there's a South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, there's a Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, and many others across the state. It takes a lot of work, I can only imagine, to resource and to build up a new organization. What inspired you and why has that been important?
Thank you, Kira. Thank you, everyone. There are a lot of amazing, amazing organizations in the state of South Dakota, run by amazing people offering amazing services. Unfortunately, one of our block roads is the lack of the English language. That is where you will lose most of our Latinos. I know what many of you are thinking, and those of you viewing us, yes, they must learn English because they are, in fact, in the US. Unfortunately, a lot of people just got here last week, last month, last year. Right now, they're crossing the border legally, some illegally. Who are we to judge? We are not immigration to say, show me your papers. Do you have a social in order to open up a business? And that is where we are losing a lot of people. I repeat, we're losing a lot of people. It starts or it ends with just a phone call. I was born here in the US. I have a business degree. I got my GED at STI, and I'm very proud of that. And then I open up my own business because that is something that I have always dreamed of. But it is not the same story for the people crossing the border from Mexico or Central America. They come here with the American dream. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I had a dream. Those crossing the borders have a dream. It's called the American dream. When they get here, they want to work. They want to be able to provide for their family back home and also for their family here. They have 2 homes. That's why they have to work double. Some have full-time with a part-time and a side hustle. And it's very complicated for them to have time to learn English, but they do it in their own time with their friends. They tried their best to be a part of this society. South Dakota, again, has amazing opportunities, but not for all. South Dakota is rich in diversity, but not in inclusion. It would take a big team of leadership, a big team of people to say, hey, it's not just about translating a document. It's about knowing the culture. It's about knowing that these people come as refugees. These people are fleeing their country. They have a lot of weight in their backs. They have a lot of traumatisms in their lives. They don't know what to do. When they get here, they're not able to compete with South Dakota's workforce due to language, due to many other barriers, which the other one would be education. So they are forced to open up a business to survive, to send money back home, as opposed to where I was born here. I know the language. I went to school for the business. I opened up my business myself. It is not the same for them. When they call an organization, the first thing that they will do is, habla español. You tell them no. that is where their dreams are left to die. That is where the American dream becomes the American nightmare. So I tell each of you, my friends, it's more of just a language barrier. It's about knowing a little bit more about their background, their culture, and most of the service that we offer are the services that you offer, plus way more, because we have to do a lot of education. We have to do a lot of translating, interpreting. It is a big, big job. And yes, there is amazing South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, the amazing Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, which we are a part of, and we are very happy. But we need to work a little bit more, and that's where we come in. Thank you.
Thank you for that passion, Selene. And a couple of things that I heard from you, that South Dakota, we have diversity, but we need to work on inclusion. So as a call to action for Rotarians, I think there's that opportunity. And then also I'm hearing from both you and Kuol, equity, fairness, access, protections, rights, opportunities for all. And that Selene is particularly equipped in her South Dakota Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to really work through some of those barriers. So again, creating that own system for the Hispanic, Latino communities is building power for them. So thank you, Selene. Tamien, you and your partners have been doing this work with Leaders of Tomorrow for a few years. You've had several cohorts graduated. You've diversified in opportunities for historically marginalized individuals. Again, tons of leadership development programs in our community. Why Leaders of Tomorrow, and invest in all that work to stand up that initiative?
Great question. I'm a numbers guy. Facts matter. We can have, and I do believe we have a lot of well-intended individuals, businesses, organizations in our community, but we still have to go to the numbers. Like, what do the numbers show in terms of people going through the existing programs? So you take a great program like Leadership South Dakota, Leadership Sioux Falls. The numbers show in these cohorts that exist today, you're lucky to get 5% diversity. And you look at the current demographic of people of color coming out of our school system, we are at over 40%. Specifically for my business partner, Bonnie, when we started our business back in 2016, Bonnie at the time was on 6 or 7 boards or advisory groups. And many of us know, again, when you are trying to diversify a nonprofit, your organization, it's the same usual suspects, the 6 to 10 people who are asked, because again, where do you find this bench strength? Not that this current generation is trying to hold people out, but we have to ask ourselves, why aren't more people in these positions, in these roles, in C-suite organizations? And lived experience, my father, who grew up in Sioux Falls, moved here into this community in 1946. I watched it firsthand how a generation ago, he was held out of rooms because of the color of his skin, and he was denied the same access as everybody else. And so growing up as myself, I didn't reach for these roles. I didn't reach to be a CEO. I didn't see it in my sphere. My aunts, uncles, nobody that I knew was in these type of things. And so when we started the business in 2016, what we didn't want to have is reach a place of success financially where then we're giving back. When we can say, we can create something now. How can we use our resources, our skill set to provide a resource and provide it to the broader community? One of the reasons that I think that you don't see more diversity amongst existing programs, Leadership South Dakota, Sioux Falls, there's a cost barrier. And a lot of folks who attend these great programs, they're funded by organizations who support them and send people within the system. Well, again, you ask yourself, how many people of color are in leadership roles, leadership positions? And this law of proximity, if people aren't showing them that it's possible, people aren't reaching for that. And so when we launched in 2018, Leaders of Tomorrow, we wanted to be able to give the broader community access to be able to have the same type of skills of communication, self-confidence, personal development as everybody else. And so we sought out grant funding, Community Foundation, First Bank and Trust, a lot of folks. Market Beat has helped, right? And there's all these folks in this room that says, how can we ask our community partners to invest in our community? And so through that, we said, let's do the work. And so we made it a free program for folks to apply for it with the goal of at least 40 to 60% diversity in our cohort, so we can at least match what we see coming out of the school system and hopefully over-index that, so we can start to equip this next wave of leaders to be able to start to step into these leadership roles so we can get more folks in rooms like this, not just on a day where we're having these discussions, but every single day. And so that was important for us to provide a pathway of access for individuals.
Thank you, Tamien. And one of the things that Tamien is underlining is representation matters. And representation at all levels really matters. And I'm also hearing from you that for systemically non-dominant people, there are often barriers that get in the way, and that we have an opportunity and a responsibility to dismantle those barriers so we can help create access. So thanks for sharing that. And along the theme, Kuol, I'm going to go to you, because representation matters, and you and I have talked a lot about it. And so when we think of representation mattering, and so does racial equity in terms of opportunities, rights, protections, those are places that I always go to. Why is the investment in BIPOC communities and businesses so important for BIPOC people? First question. And how does our community and our state benefit from investing in BIPOC people?
That's a great question, Kira. And as I said, listen to my friend and mentor, Tamien, to save us from redundancy of the logistics of numbers and statistics, I echo what he says when it comes to statistics and change and increasing numbers and how dollars impact BIPOC communities. But I'm going to take it and shift it a little bit on the lens of representation and relationship. In our communities, it's not just about investing dollars or writing a check, but it's also creating a parallel trust format. So a lot of times when BIPOC communities want to invest in their own community, it takes trust. It takes that risk management. In any business organization, 500 or 500 Fortune companies, you need to have that trusted person in your organization to say, hey, we don't know how to run this business. Okay, fine. Let's find some analytics. Let's find some logistics. That's what happens when you're also building community. You have to have trust. And to do that, you have to be within that same community that you're trying to impact. So back to Kira's question, a lot of times when it comes to the finances and the barriers of our BIPOC community, it's access to dollars. And access to dollars has historically been limited to the people of color because, one, they may not have the knowledge or the resources to teach them how to utilize said funds. And when we're trying to advocate for the programs, they always ask this concept of show me the impact. But you can't show impact if you actually are the person who's going through the lived experience. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about funding programs or initiatives, we have over 200 nonprofits in Sioux Falls. A lot of them are doing almost the same services, but the relationship that's within those organizations is always hard because there's not that parallel trust or taking that risk and say, hey, you know what? I believe in this community. I believe in whatever you're trying to do. We're going to believe in you. Here's some funds, or here's a connection. Something that I've realized when I moved here in 2015 about investing in BIPOC community members, there's a lack of that, and there's a lack of representation. And when there's a lack of representation in people of color, 62% of people of color are actually in the Black community find trust when they see another person of color. So for example, let's say we go to a chamber mixer. I see 2 or 3 Black people or a person of color. I'm 80% chances of me talking to that person specifically, but look at that trust that I already built just because of that proximity of representation. But I may miss the opportunity to connect with you beautiful young folks here, all because I feel safe connecting with that person. That's our reality, and that's the consequences of not having representation in any organization. So when you want to build trust, you also have to have trust represent what it is that you're saying. And when you want to invest in the BIPOC community, you need to put policies, you need to put organization, you need to put agendas in your organization to say, hey, if we want to recruit more people, let's have someone who has a lived experience within our organization or hire somebody within to say, hey, how do we impact this community? And be intentional. Don't be scared to say, hey, look, we don't have the answer. This is the reason why we want to do this in an organization. That gives us truth into what you're saying versus just being performative, like you said, Kira. So long story short, invest in representation, but be intentional. Also, don't be afraid to ask those people who've been there.
Thank you, Kuol. Powerful wisdom in your response. Selena, how about for you? Representation matters. So why is it important for us to invest in BIPOC communities?
I think we believe we're in the same boat as Kuol and Tamien. In our community, we see a lot of people from different countries, and so we're all in the same boat. So we reflect more with them than when the people that were born and raised in our state. And I think that is a little bit of troubled or something to look at, because we're mirroring and feeling more comfortable with people that are on the same boat for us, meaning that we either sink or we swim, because that boat ain't going anywhere. When we should be looking at what is our state, our city, our communities doing for us. We need to see a little bit more of leadership within our own communities. Leadership for us is, I will give you an example. During COVID, a lot of people from Guatemala were left without their identities because their passport is their only source of identity for most of them. There wasn't anybody doing anything for them. I found out because my own business, CBM, we helped them with filing taxes and some immigration documents for them. And I found out all these passports are expired. And it wasn't just because, hey, it's a pandemic, it's COVID, the consulate of Guatemala is closed. No, there was previous years of trouble that they were not coming in, they were not committing to giving the people passports. That is maybe something new for you guys, but that meant a lot of people during COVID were left without help. I was very fortunate to be a part of a dream coalition with the South Dakota Hispanic Chamber. I get nervous, I'm sorry.
Doing great.
With the Sioux Falls community, a lot of organizations like Voices for Peace, Voices for Justice, and we were able to help that community. But it was more than just helping them with their rent for the month, helping with more than just money to buy groceries and diaper for their children. It was, how are we going to get them legalized? How are we going to get them be able to provide an identification when they go to the bank? How are we going to help them? We reached out. Unfortunately, a lot of doors never opened, and it was pretty sad, but it was affecting also my own family, my closest best friends. It was affecting the whole Latino community by this point, because the people from Guatemala, we're all mixed by now. In my own family, we have people from Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, the US. So when it impacts one of us, it impacts all of us. So then we had to do something, call of action. We started calling to Guatemala. Never in my life had I ever spoken to a representative, nevertheless, from a different country. We were having Zoom meetings on a regular basis. We were helping the people out. We were helping at the same time, helping them translate and apply for COVID relief services. So we were doing a lot of work, and I'm not just saying this. People from Guatemala were saying, "Where's your representative? Where's your representation? Do you have a representative from Guatemala?" Like, my family's from Mexico, close enough, right? Unfortunately, for some things, you must be from Guatemala, but we were able to get through to them, and they were able to come back. It became national news. So, and it's amazing what we've done as a community. And imagine if we get more of us more together, what big impact we will do, and it will be noticeable. Because every time we do something as minimal as whatever it is, we always make national news. Why? Because it's South Dakota. They have Latinos out there. They have people out there. So then representation for us is at all levels, state level, city level. We have that dream, and this year we want to be able to bring up leaders. We're going to be able to talk to our partners and say, hey, can you help us bring up more leaders? We need to recognize the pillars that have been holding the Latino community, and it's not just one or two persons. It's not the same one or two people that you keep seeing in the newspaper and in the pamphlets, in your flyers, in your organization, the board of directors. No, there's more people out there, and we unite and we work hard, and at the end of the day, we're just trying to survive. We do need leadership. So with the help of all of you and our panel, hopefully in this year, the South Dakota Hispanic Chamber of Commerce will be able to have at least 12 leaders by the end of the year. Thank you.
Selena, it is not lost on me the resiliency of your community. that you're describing, and also your goal to raise up leaders within your community to solve your community problems. And while that is amazing, I also look to all of us and wonder, what can we do about our systems that we've created in white culture, if you will, to not put all of that heavy on these underrepresented communities to solve their own problems, and instead we can do this in community together. So thank you for sharing that. Tamien, representation, you mentioned something about it already, but I think it's also important to say that it's representation at all levels, not just entry level in terms of hospitality or retail or manufacturing, but that there's pathways to raise people of color and communities up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think, a big barrier that I see is we've all heard is who you know. And we all probably experienced that several times in our life. And you think about coming from communities of color, well, who do you know? Who do you know that's successful, or who that has a successful business, or that can give you advice on how to do your taxes? All these different barriers that kind of pile up if you don't have people in your direct sphere. I would just challenge you guys to look around the room and look at people that you know in the room and think about over your lifetime how those relationships helped you get more business and help you solve problems and help you build mastermind groups and just the ideation of what success really looks like. And when you don't have that access, you don't have that connectivity, that is a huge barrier. And I think that, how do we close some of that gap? A lot of it comes by way of, whether that's business mentoring or, again, those relationships. It really comes down to that relationship piece of it. When I think a huge opportunity is the financial side of it. When you have a great idea for a business, right, it's not about just the capital. That's a huge barrier of entry. But again, a lot of times you're making a lot of mistakes because you don't have the connection to figure out what to do, what not to do, X, Y, Z. And why this is an important topic, I think there's two sides of it that I would challenge everyone just to think about. One, what if we don't do this well, right? We can look at, again, we are great in a lot of ways in our community. But being transparent, we're great in a lot of the easy stuff. We're a very thriving, successful community in the easy stuff. But you put on the table the tough topics of being a welcoming community to our immigrant refugee community, being great at our prison population, or reentry, being great at homelessness. We're in the same boat as most other communities, right? And so we're at the perfect size where, again, we can still do more about it. But if we don't, we can look down the road to other larger communities. You can see the separatism, and you can see when this group is just left to themselves to try to figure it out, nothing good comes from that. So part of that, we have to challenge ourselves, like, who do we want to be 2030, 2040? Diversity is happening, right? It's coming in, but what kind of community do we want to be? I would say on the side of even proactively or going on offense with this, as we envision where Sioux Falls is going, what if we did? What if we became that community that was well represented, where it gave access to different folks? As Selena talked about, there's, again, people that want to come to a community where they feel welcome, they feel at home, they feel like they have access to succeed. Well, if we want to be a thriving community, period, one thing that every community is facing right now is what? Workforce. What if we turned the tide and said, we're going to make a commitment as a community to be welcoming for all people, where there's access. I don't care where you come from, what country you come from, what color you are. There's truly no barrier to entry, because we wrapped our arms around each other as Sioux Falls members first and became that community. I guarantee you people would be moving here, right? Just don't have them come in February or January, right? But when it gets warmer, you have them come here. And if we could be that community that was that welcoming and had those true pathways where people knew they could be successful, we would get our workforce. We would get people come from other communities. And I think that is by itself the why every person in our community, if we truly want Sioux Falls to continue to be special 10 years, 20 years down the road, this takes a collective effort to have a focus and an attention to it.
So you talk about the business case. We've been talking about the heart case. And we have a lot of white business leaders. I'm one of them. Selene, you talked about having some cultural competence, being interested in learning someone's lived experience. So can you say to us, and I'll have you start, Selene, what can you share with us about cultural humility, the importance of cultural competence, and inclusive leadership in bringing Latina individuals on to our workforces and investing them as community members as well?
What I can say is we are sleeping on some great, amazing people. We have people that are earning their daily wages in a wonderful job, different types of jobs, but there are attorneys back home. There are doctors back home. They are well-known, powerful people back home. But when they come here, they're just trying to make it through the day, right? I think we're sleeping on these people. We have a lot of job openings. We have people to fill it. If we start giving more opportunity, we're able to even overfill those positions. You may think, well, we might need a Latino or somebody from the BIPOC community to go into the cleaning business, go into Smithville. Great job opportunities again, but we got teachers, we have counselors, we have a lot of people with a lot of things to bring to the table. And I think we just need to open up our eyes, open up our ears a little bit, and see what really needs to be done. I think the problem is, well, we have a lot of jobs, nobody wants to work. I think the solution is right in front of our eyes. We have people that want to work, and that's why they are here. I forgot to mention, also in my family, I have people from Thailand. My sister-in-law came here as refugee with all her family. You know, it's not just, oh, just Latinos. No, it's people from all over the world that, once again, we're in the same boat. And we came here not because we wanted to go shopping, not because they wanted to, I don't know, just learn a new language, a new culture. No, they're here because they want to be able to provide for their family once again. And at the same time, why not help them be successful? Why not give them a helping hand? A lot of our family, our friends, when they come here, we are very shy. I'm shy, and I was born here, but I was the only one from my family. We're 5 siblings that was actually born in the U.S., and then my smallest one brother was born in Florida, and myself in Texas. So growing up, I saw the daily struggles of my mother as a single parent and my eldest brothers and sister because they go to school and not understand the language. When they were told, go back home, I had to interpret that to my family. I myself come with a lot of heavy weight and a lot of resentment and a lot of things that I am working on myself. I met a lovely young lady that is part of a women's organization for the state of South Dakota. When she met me, she said, "I've heard you talk, but I feel that there is a lot of sadness in your heart." And she was right, and that made me feel beaut- um, beautiful things at the same time because wow, somebody actually saw me, and it doesn't take much, you know. We're not here to compete with anybody. When we opened the South Dakota Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, everybody came to us with the why are you dividing? Why are you competing? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Instead of saying, oh my goodness, that good job, you know, keep it going. That's amazing. We needed that. You know, if we could have more words of encouragement, that would be amazing. I'm not going to tell you here, have love and peace in your heart. That is beyond what I can ask from you. All I can say is have a little bit of humanity, make us feel like humans. And again, we're not here to compete. We're here to just be someone. And you'd be surprised of how many people have also come to us with a lot of um, beautiful words. As soon as the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was out in the news, we had all the schools calling us. How can we work together to make sure that Latinos are graduating? My question was, who has the data that can tell us how many Latinos are graduating? Who has the data to tell us how many Latinos are opening up their businesses? Who has the data for this? Who has the data for that? That means way more work for us because now more people are depending on us. Organizations are depending on us now. We had a lot of people during legislation that were running, senators calling us and say, I have in this district, do you know how many Latino businesses are in this district? We felt wonderful to be able to provide services, not just for Latinos, but for you, for everyone. And so I really don't have much to say. I hope these words can make an impact today.
Thank you for sharing your lived experience and advocating. Kuol, I'm curious from you. Why is cultural humility and cultural competence important for us as white people to learn?
This has always been a difficult question for me to answer growing up with two identities. Coming to the United States as a refugee, came to the United States as a 10-year-old. So I had the benefit of understanding what life was like back home in Africa, and then also understanding what life is going to become and will be in the United States. Then having parents who are first-time or first-generation refugees give me the principles of my life back home versus me educating them on the life that we live here now. So when it comes to culture understanding and competency is that you have to have grace for people who are trying to live in a country that is unknown, excuse me, with the different cultures, different principles, different rules, while also still trying to learn and retain their identity. So this was something that I struggled with throughout, and my friend Selene said that understanding people and the barriers and the challenges that comes with them, being a refugee and immigrant has more barriers than a lot of times that the news or articles or any research provides. For example, I'll give you a basic example. Going to school in elementary, I have to wake up a specific time, take care of my little brothers and sisters. I have to understand when the bus schedule is. When your parents aren't literate to also understand what the bus schedule is. So that means I'm a 10-year-old tending to my little brothers and sisters. That's also a cultural difference when it comes to refugees and understanding refugees and immigrants in the United States. We also have to be educators within our own community. It doesn't matter what age you are, we are always educators in some capacity. Now, fast forwarding to my adult life and career-wise, I can go do my 9 to 5, but then when I go back into my own community, I see people struggling. I see people struggling with the linguistic skills. Literacy is so important that it helps us engage with our surrounding and environment. And the reason why I say literacy is so important, especially teaching it to new Americans, is that historically you can just go 41st and find a geographic location by using signs. But literacy helps you engage with community. It gives you access to almost everything, even health. I was a 10-year-old reading mortgage documents and health prescriptions to my mother who couldn't read. Now imagine if I read that information wrong. Now that's just basic knowledge, and this is basic things that a lot of refugees and immigrants need and equip us with. But what happens is when we go into society or the workforce development, they say, well, just pull up your bootstraps. We don't even have a boot to begin with. And a lot of times when we talk about our stories and the challenges that we have, is that you can do it just encouragement, but encouragement goes beyond just words of affirmation. You need to do the work. You need to be invested in their lives. So when we talk about how to impact people and understanding their cultures, understanding our culture also builds relationship in parallel. So I've seen and worked with a lot of you here. You guys see me in many capacities and spoke at Think 3D Culture Con about representation. And the reason why I stepped away for almost 2 years in the corporate world is to understand what Sioux Falls is really about. I've lived in 22 different states and 113 different communities. Sioux Falls was different because I had faith that the introduction and the power of a warm welcome was something that was going to change this community. And the reason why we have these silos of organizations such as the Think 3D, the South Dakota or Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, is we have a need within our own community and our lived experience. And I'm going to leave you with this. In society, individuals or communities have changed in 4 different seasons. And this is something that John Maxwell talked about. And I think I've lived my life my entire life, I've lived using these 4 principles. That first principle is that communities and people change when they are hurt enough. People change when they learn or have learned enough that they want to change. And people change when they see or are inspired that they want to change. The last thing is that people change when they receive and have enough. I've went through the journey, my friends here went through the journey of trying to attain those 4 processes of change, but our community is not there yet. We haven't received enough to want to change, or we can change. We've been seeing, we heard, and we are inspired, but we don't take the action. So at this point, when we create these organizations, not because we want to be better or we want to segregate or change things, because there's things that as a community we don't tackle together. And I think with all the over 200 nonprofits here in Sioux Falls, I've realized a lot of them are doing great things, but you guys don't have access to each other. And even to the point where I, working with Reach Literacy and connecting with my good friend Paige, I was like, Paige, Reach Literacy's program and mission is wonderful. How come you're not connecting with a lot of these organizations and talking to their employees, their first generation refugees? So what I've done in the last 3 years is doing this assessment between organizations of the work they're doing to try to bridge those gaps between the culture, the language, and all the things that hold you from being great is literally just the risk taking and saying, hey, you know what? We're doing this, you're doing this, let's see if we can do it better. Let's do it together. And I haven't seen that. Everyone has these little silos like, nope, this is our organization, we're gonna do this better. Oh, what is your data? What is your analysis on this? What is your analysis on this community? We're all hanging on to something that doesn't even belong to us. And that's the hardship of what I've seen in Sioux Falls. And that's what truly breaks my heart. I've seen many beautiful and great hearts here, but the reality, the truth is, we're not taking action to try to be intentional about building cultural relationships and culture and cross-culture competence.
Thank you. It's a great segue into my final question. Call to action. That's really what Kuol is painting for us, our opportunity as individuals, as business leaders, as community members, and as Rotary. So Tamien, I'm going to start with you. When you think about the calls to action that you have for us, for our friends online, what are the behaviors that we need to start committing to and having accountability around?
That's a great one. Just to tie in one word that you used from last one into the same question, the humility. What does it mean to be humble, right? And my problem with the word just inclusion by itself is it's saying you're welcome to this table, right? You're welcome in the room with us. Take the couple of examples that both of these great individuals had just talked about. Imagine going through these scenarios within your family, right? It ties back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs when you're dealing with food, water, shelter, security. Nothing else matters. So imagine you're struggling to figure these things out, trying to figure out how to get representation, to get access to X, Y, Z, and then say, oh, come to our event where you are one of a handful of people of color, how uncomfortable that is. We talk about this all the time in leadership. Leaders go first. And so as leaders in the room, how do we start to get uncomfortable? Who's going to be the first one to be uncomfortable, right? We're okay. We're living all right. How do we come from our standpoint and start to get uncomfortable to go into these communities and reach out our hand to build that relationship? Because the reality is you cannot have compassion from a distance. And so until you meet and hear the stories, not from a stage, but one-on-one at coffee or lunch, or hear and see firsthand, that's when you miss taking action. We've had these table talks for the last year and a half. The great opportunity for folks, again, a safe environment. We have over 120 people showing up, very diverse. At best, at any of these events, we maybe have a handful of community leaders showing up. So my call to action is to find some space in the next 3 months to get uncomfortable, right? We're doing okay. How do we get uncomfortable? Not just reach our hand out, but go to these communities, build those relationships. And from that relationship and trust, as Kuol talked about, that's how we get more people into the room, to the table.
Thank you, Tamien. Selene, what would your quick call to action be?
Learn more about us. I posted something that something you must know is I have a sense of humor. I take everything, try to make it funny. I got that from my mom. I was asked what's the difference between Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Hispanics, and I was like, oh, I kind of miss when we were all just called Mexicans, which was funny because we're Mexican and not everybody got the joke, and sometimes, it was also a cry for help, really. But the thing is, if you can learn a little bit more about us. We're not all Mexicans. We come from different places. Our stories are very similar. We're here because we're fleeing guerrilleros, pandilleros, cartels. You know, this is the same story. So don't go into deep of trying to look into our souls, because it's a sad story, and it's mostly always the same. Others more terrible than some. But for instance, I besides having to teach Latinos about the 4th of July, because that's new to them, I also have to teach them about Cinco de Mayo, because not everybody celebrates Cinco de Mayo. Not everybody knows what Cinco de Mayo is. It took me a while for me to learn what it was, yet it's something that is celebrated here in Sioux Falls every year. And it's beautiful because we love to party. Who doesn't want to party? But the reality is, we don't know what Cinco de Mayo is. Cinco de Mayo doesn't mean anything to us. If you really want to learn about us, celebrate our culture, why not learn more about our Independences Days? They're all in September. Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, everybody's back home independence is in September. So if you want to make me laugh and cry at the same time, why don't we focus on that special day and maybe do a celebration, maybe a parade, and then hopefully the mayor can say, hey, never mind, I had no idea what Cinco de Mayo was. The actual month of celebration is September. Thank you.
Kuol, final call to action.
For me, and being involved in a lot of spaces with you guys, the call to action for me for you guys is that take the risk. We can give you guys statistics, we can tell you guys our novels, we can give you our lived experience. Take risks in whether it's financially, a friendship, or a warm introduction to somebody, but also have a space in your heart for grace, because we're going to make mistakes. We don't know all the answers. We don't know all the statistics. We don't have all the education. The truth of the matter is that take risks and just have also space for grace for us to go through failure and celebrate the successes together. I can ask you many things, but the main thing I can ask you, we're all humans in the end. We're all connected with our human moments. At the end of the day, it's not about our status or titles or the impact we made, but it's the legacy that you leave with the next generation. So my biggest ask for you is just have grace within the failures within our own community, and say that you don't know. Also, it's okay to not know things, and that's all I'll leave you with. Just have grace.
How about a round of applause for our brave panelists speaking truth? And I thank you very much for being here. And I would challenge Rotary that we don't just have conversations, but that we lead in action. Action that's going to build impact for building racial equity in our community. So thank you, Rotary, for having this conversation today.
Well, Kira, I can't thank you enough for bringing this conversation to Downtown Rotary. I'm grateful for all of you today, and I know I'm walking away knowing more, and I'm grateful for that as well. Thank you all for being at Rotary today. Our next program, January 23rd, will be the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra. I hope to see you all there. Rotary is adjourned.